Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all having a great day so far and a great start to your week. Today I'm showing you my newest build. This is my iteration of the classic Crucible tank build. I'm sure many of you have seen around before. Originally, I started throwing this together earlier last week to try and fight Malenia. I am on New Game Plus 8 and she's definitely something to be reckoned with. I decided I would show you guys what I've come up with. If you guys do want to skip ahead to a section further into the video, I will have timestamps posted on the screen as well as in the description below the video. Now, this build may seem very plain and simple at first glance, however, it is a lot more intricate than it seems. This build does massive amounts of physical damage and stance damage by having very high strength, very high faith. Now, a side note is that I am using my main character, which is currently at the end of Journey 8, almost level 500, and the reason I'm showing you on this character is this is the character that I use to do various testing with various builds without the need to use a larval tier. So normally when most people hear Crucible Knight, they may think of doing holy damage and using holy incantations or spells. However, what I'm doing with this build is quite different from that. This is mostly a strength and faith build, allowing us to do massive amounts of stance and physical damage and very little holy damage with the exception of our main weapon. Now, before we get into the basics of this build, I do want to give a shout out to all of my subscribers as we did just break through the 500 subscriber milestone just last night. So thank you to everyone for the support. I'm glad you're here. I'm excited that you guys have enjoyed what I've put out so far. The content will only get better. I would like to hear from you guys on what I could do better or differently. So please be sure to like this video if you enjoy it and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more interesting Elden Ring content. Now, starting off with the obvious here, we're wearing the Crucible Axe armor set. Each piece of this armor gives you 4% damage increase to all Crucible incantations. If you have all 4 armor pieces equipped, then you're totaling about 17% damage increase. Now, since this is a Crucible Knight build, we do need to have all 4 of these pieces equipped because we do want that 17% extra damage, because the incantations we're going to be using with this build, which I'll get to in just a little bit, are doing strength and stance damage. Now, the weapon I chose to use for this build is the Ordovis's Greatsword. The reason I chose this weapon instead of, say, Siluria's Tree, which is a great spear, is because the base stats on the Greatsword are slightly higher than they are on Siluria's Tree. On top of that, the Ash of War with Ordovis's Greatsword will help us do more physical damage at a lower FP cost compared to Siluria's Tree. We're doing about 10 points of FP less. In addition to that, the Ash of War on the Ordovis's Greatsword does stack with the Godfrey Icon and Shard of Alexander talismans. Both of these talismans will increase the damage of the Vortex. Vortex does grant you extra poise, making it very hard for your opponents to interrupt. Now, the damage this Vortex deals is both physical and holy. However, it is doing 80% more physical damage than holy, which is the other reason I decided to use this weapon over the Great Spear Siluria's Tree. The seal I'm using with this build is the Clawmark seal. Now, this may seem odd for this build. I chose this seal because it does also scale with strength as well as faith. The strength scaling will help the physical damage from our incantations. Faith will help scale the holy damage. Even though holy damage isn't our primary focus with this build, it will still come in useful against certain types of enemies. Now, one of the biggest benefits, in my opinion, of using this seal instead of the Erdtree seal, for example, is that while the Erdtree seal does have a much higher scaling in faith, it only scales on faith, which won't benefit us at all when it comes to using our incantations, because we are trying to land the physical and stance damage, not holy damage, basically holding this build back from its maximum potential. Now, the talismans I chose to run with this build are pretty straightforward. First, we have the Phlox Canvas talisman to boost potency of our incantations by 8%, Shard of Alexander to boost our attack power by 15%, the Godfrey Icon, which will stack another 15% of damage to our charged attack, as well as our spells, giving us a 15% total to our Crucible incantations and a 30% damage increase to our weapons Ash of War. Now, the fourth and final talisman I have for this build, you can actually change this fourth one out to anything you'd like, depending on what situation you're going into. However, for the moment, I chose to use the Dragon Crest Great Shield talisman, simply because it's nice to have at least one defensive talisman equipped, especially while fighting a very aggressive boss or you're in PvP combat. Whatever it may be, the 20% physical damage negation from this talisman will still come in handy. Now, the next incantations are aspects of the Crucible incantations. Now, I'm only using 3. The first one you want to make sure that you equip is Horns. This incantation only requires 27 faith to cast, deals standard physical damage, as well as deals 17 points of stance damage uncharged and 30 points of stance damage on a full charge. This incantation and all of the other aspects of the Crucible incantations do receive a 3.5% damage bonus for each piece of the armor set you have equipped while casting this ability. Now, what this ability does is it creates a horn on your shoulder you use to dash forward, impale your foes, and then launch them into the air. What this does is it creates the perfect opportunity to punish because it knocks them off of their feet, and it's extremely cheap on your FP, while it only uses 18 points to cast. Now, our next incantation from the aspects of the Crucible is Tail. Now, compared to the previous incantation, this ability does do a lot more damage, but has a very slow cast time. It does require you to put yourself in a risky position while using it. If you manage to land both hits, it can be very, very rewarding. Now, what this does for you is it causes you to literally grow a tail and sweep it around in front of you 2 times. It requires 42 stamina, 27 faith, and 20 points of FP per cast. This does do 13 points of stance damage on the first successful hit and 39 points on the second successful hit, for about 42 points of stance damage altogether, making this the strongest incantation of the aspects of the Crucible that we are using, making the FP consumption very well worth it in my opinion. Now, since patch 1.07, the FP consumption was decreased from 22 to 20 points of FP, and the stamina attack power against guarded enemies was increased. Now, the last incantation we're using is Breath. This incantation does come in really useful, especially since a lot of enemies in Elden Ring are weak to fire. This does stack with other fire damage buffs like Flame Grant Me Strength, for example, or the Flame Shrouding Cracked Tear in your physic. This incantation uses 40 points of your stamina, 28 points of FP, and 27 points of faith to use. It does only do 28 points of stance damage, making this the weakest of the aspects of the Crucible incantations, at least as far as physical damage. So my final thoughts for this entire build are pretty positive. This was a new type of build for me. I don't usually do anything that's mostly strength or builds that do a lot of stance damage or anything like that, but I really enjoyed this build. I had a lot of fun tinkering with it and trying to figure out what I could do to make it tick, but I did try to make this one original to the way I play, and I really can't wait to see if you guys decide to do the same thing as well. I love to see some of your guys' builds. Being able to use a build like this to quite literally bully one of the hardest bosses in the game, at least for me, it just completely blows me away. I mean, this is definitely going to be one of the coolest builds I've ever used. Anyways, guys, it is officially 4 a.m. for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you stuck around, please consider liking the video and hitting that subscribe button as well with all notifications turned on. And at the time of me recording this, we just surpassed 600 subscribers to the channel, so thank you to everyone who is currently subscribed. I will be working on more content like this during this coming week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate everyone who stuck around. I hope you guys have a great night or great day. I'll see you guys next time.